be on your screen.
כי מציון תצא תורה ובאה מירושלים כי מציון תצא תורה ודבר אדוני מירושלים ברוך שנתן תורה לעמו ישראל בקדושתו ברוך שנתן תורה לעמו ישראל בקדושתו. And we say the blessings together before reading from the Torah. Baruch hu et Yamborah, Baruch Yamborach leolam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu im kol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato, v'at shechina notenet ha'torah. Amen.
So we're in the book of Genesis still. We're coming toward the end of it, and we're in the story of Jacob. So in last week's parsha, Jacob and Esau are brothers, born to Isaac and Rivka, and Jacob. We're told that Jacob was the wise one. We were told he was studying in the yeshiva. He was studying in the tent and home with his mom. Of course, there were no yeshivas then. There weren't even really Jews then. But and Esau was the one who worked the fields. And that his father preferred Esau and his mother preferred Jacob. And Esau would cook the food and the meat and bring it to his father, who loved a good hearty meal. And in that parsha, Esau comes home from the field starving and really hungry after working, and he asks his brothers for some lentils, some food, and Jacob says to him, "Sell me your birthright, and then I'll give you the food." And Esau says, "I'm what good is a birthright to me? I'm going to die anyway." And Jacob insists on him selling him his birthright, and so Esau says, "Okay," and he eats the food, and he eats, and he gets up, and he walks away. And actually, that little part in the Torah is where we're told that we're supposed to bless our food, because Esau did not bless his food afterward, and that was his great sin. The rabbis go great lengths to make Esau the bad guy and Jacob the good guy, because Jacob is our ancestor and Esau is not. So they go through great lengths to twist the story around. It's quite miraculous what they do to try to make Esau the bad guy. And then the story continues, and so Jacob was the second born son, so that's why he's trying to get the birthright from Esau. He was born grabbing Esau's heel, and that's where we get the story that he's a heel, right? Like he's literally grabbing his heel. That's his name. So now Isaac is dying, and he says to Esau, "Bring me my meal, and I will bless you." And Esau goes out into the field to kill a lamb and then come back and cook it. But in the meantime, Rivka and Jacob have a whole nother plan, and they're going to steal the birthright. They're going to steal the blessing from Isaac. Rachel. He's going to steal the blessing from Esau. And so Rachel has Jacob place sheepskin, thank you, on his arms, because Esau's more hairy. He's the hairy one. And Isaac's vision is very bad, so he can't see so well. And so calm down. So he tricks them. And Jacob and Rachel have this discussion, and Jacob's like, "But I'm going to get cursed if I do this. It's not going to be a good thing." And Rachel had been told that the younger one, the older one will serve the younger one, so she perhaps thinks she's doing God's will. She also preferred Jacob. And so they trick Isaac, and he gets the blessing from his father for being the inheritor. And needless to say, Esau comes back from the field and finds out that his father has blessed his younger brother and that he's going to get the blessing and all the benefits of that. And Esau gets rather upset. And it's not clear what happens, but he says either out loud or to himself, I am going to, after this, I'm going to then, after I mourn for my father, I'm going to kill my brother. And somehow Rachel hears this. So Rachel sends Jacob away. So that last week's parsha, Jacob sent away, and now we're entering this week's parsha. Jacob is on his way. He's told to go find a wife from his father's family relations. And so he's on his path to do that. So that's where we enter this week's parsha. Jacob has fled for his life, we think, or we're told. And this is where we enter the story. And these next few weeks of Parsha are all about Jacob's trials and tribulations in his family. So, Ari, you want to raise your hand before we read? You already have a question.
No, I just wanted to comment that what you laid out was interesting because it's kind of diverse masculinities. So Aesop is the hunter and he's, the heel. and Jacob is, of course, without hairy body and he's a cook, right?
Right.
So that's interesting. That's an interesting, we don't usually emphasize that aspect, I don't think, and that's, I think, very interesting.
Yeah, and just to be clear, Jacob is the heel.
Oh, Jacob is the heel. Oh, that doesn't fit though.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so that's where we enter the story. Neil.
Oh, right. I'm now getting the Hebrew. Ekev.
Yeah, Ekev.
Is the word for heel. Yeah. Yaakov Ekev. Yeah, I never actually made that connection before.
Oh. Okay, Neil, then we're going to jump in. We usually wait to ask questions before we jump in.
It does seem like in the last parsha, there was incredible amount of levels of both individual motivation and what's happening interpersonally between family members. The line that sticks for me so poignantly is after Jacob, under Rebekah's guidance, puts animal fur on him and enters, Isaac is asking repeated questions to try and clarify the person who he's speaking with. And the sort of crust of the matter is, he says, you have the feel of Esau, but the voice of Jacob. And yet, despite this incongruency, he goes along with giving the blessing, followed by the angst of the older brother that there is no other blessing. It is in a patriarchal manner. Everything is given to one person, and there's no sharing of resources and honor and inclusion. And basically, that's the crust of all the conflict, the scarcity of resources and this hyper individual hierarchical way of viewing things and acting them out in socioeconomic dynamics.
But yet at the same time, if you take it to the individual level, again, there's this diversity of masculinities. So you can see this as a gender fluidity. The trope here is is the beginning of a kind of gender fluidity to get what you want, which is interesting.
Yeah, I forgot. I was just going to add something, but let's jump in because I don't remember what I was going to add.
Well, along with that gender fluidity, there is still an imbalance. The type of masculinity Esau represents is frowned on, and he's vilified. And this continues throughout rabbinic tradition. So it's two types of masculinity, perhaps, but one is vilified over the other, unfortunately and tragically.
I'm not sure that it's the masculinity that's vilified. I think it's the representation of who the person becomes, the offspring of who that person is. That we have to vilify Esau because he's the Canaanites and Jacob is the Israelites. So I think it has more to do with the people that is why, but they go to great length to vilify Esau, for sure. Incredible. Okay, somebody want to read?
I can.
Thank you.
Okay, so Jacob left Beersheba and set out for Haran. He came upon a certain place and stopped there for the night, for the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of that place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place. He had a dream. A stairway was set on the ground, and its top reached to the sky, and messengers of God were going up and down on it. And standing beside him was Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, who said, I am Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, the God of your father Avraham, and the God of Isaac. The ground on which you are lying, I will assign to you, to your offspring. Your descendants shall be as the dust of the earth. You shall spread out to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south. All the families of the earth shall bless themselves by you and your descendants. Remember, I am with you. I will protect you wherever you go and will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, Surely Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh is present in this place, and I did not know it. Shaken, he said, How awesome is this place! This is none other than the abode of God, and that is the gateway to heaven. Early in the morning, Jacob took the stone that he had put under his head and set it up as a pillar and poured oil on the top of it. He named that site Bethel, but previously the name of the city had been Luz. Jacob then made a vow, saying, If God remains with me, protecting me on this journey that I'm making, and giving me bread to eat and clothing to wear, and I return safe to my father's house, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh shall be my God. And this stone, which I have set up as a pillar, shall be God's abode. And of all that you give me, I will set aside a tithe for you. Jacob resumed his journey and came to the land of the Easterners. There, before his eyes, was a well in the open. 3 flocks of sheep were lying there beside it. From the flocks were watered from the well. 4 of the flocks were watered from the well. The stone on the mouth of the well was large. When all the flocks were gathered there, the stone would be rolled from the mouth of the well, and the sheep watered. Then the stone would be put back in its place on the mouth of the well. Jacob said to them, My friends, where are you from? And they said, We're from Haran. He said to them, Do you know Laban, the son of Nahor? And they said, Yes, we do. He continued, Is he well? They answered, Yes, he is, and there is his daughter, Rachel, coming with the flock. He said, It is still abroad. It is still broad daylight, too early to round up the animals. Water the flock and take them to pasture. But they said, We cannot until all the flocks are rounded up. Then the stone is rolled off the mouth of the well, and we water the sheep. While he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's flock, for she was its shepherd. And when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of his uncle Laban, and the flock of his uncle Laban, Jacob went up and rolled the stone off the mouth of the well and watered the flock of his uncle Laban. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and broke into tears. Jacob told Rachel that he was his father's kinsman, that he was Rebekah's son, and she ran and told her father. On hearing the news of his sister's son Jacob, Laban ran to greet him. He embraced him and kissed him and took him into his house. He told Laban all that had happened, and Laban said to him, You are truly my bone and flesh. When he had stayed with him a month's time, Laban said to Jacob, Just because you are kinsmen, should you serve me for nothing? Tell me, what shall your wages be? Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older one was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah had weak eyes. Rachel was shapely and beautiful. Jacob loved Rachel, so he answered, I'll serve you 7 years for your younger daughter, Rachel. Laban said, better that I give her to you than that I should give her to an outsider. Stay with me. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of his love for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife, for my time is fulfilled, that I may cohabit with her. But isn't that the verb ahava? Why did they translate it to cohabit? It's
Let's see.
very strange. Where is that?
Vayavo.
Vayavo, come.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
an intimate
Yeah, that's
Okay.
usually what that word means. And they
Okay.
usually mean
upon her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And Laban gathered all the people of the place and made a feast. When evening came, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to him, and he cohabited with her. Laban had given his maidservant Zilpah to his daughter Leah as her maid. When morning came, there was Leah. So he said to Laban, what is this you have done to me? I was in your service for Rachel. Why did you deceive me? Laban said, it's not a practice in our place to marry off the younger before the older. Wait until the bridal week of this one is over, and we will give you that one too, provided you serve me another 7 years. Jacob did so. He waited out the bridal week of the one, and then he gave him his daughter, Rachel, his wife. Laban had given his maidservant, Bilhah, to his daughter Rachel as her maid, and Jacob cohabited with Rachel also. Indeed, he loved Rachel more than Leah, and he served him another 7 years. Seeing that Rachel was unloved, Yud Hey Vav Hey.
No. Time out. Seeing that Leah.
Oh, seeing that Leah was unloved.
It's important.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's very wrong to say the other way. Yud Hey Vav Hey opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. Leah conceived and bore a son and named him Reuben. For she declared, it means Yud Hey Vav Hey has seen my affliction. It also means now my husband will love me. She conceived again and bore a son and declared, this is because Yud Hey Vav Hey heard that I was unloved and has given me this one also. So she named him Simeon. Again, she conceived and bore a son and declared, this time my husband will become attached to me, for I've borne him 3 sons. Therefore, he was named Levi. She conceived again and bore a son and declared, this time I will praise Yud Hey Vav Hey. Therefore, she named him Judah. Then she stopped bearing.
Let's pause there for a few moments to kind of regroup and talk about what just happened.
A lot.
Yeah, a lot happened. Yes. So Jacob, I think we can turn it off for right now. So we have a bit of a discussion. Thank you. Welcome, folks who just joined. It's nice to have you. So Jacob flees, and so this is Jacob's ladder, right? It said stairway, but it's not a stairway. It's really Jacob's ladder, right? This is the infamous Jacob's ladder of the angels going up and down. And one of the things that the Kabbalists talk about is accessing, when does divine flow down to us, and when do we have to kind of climb up the ladder, if you will, to access divine flow. And this ladder, I think, is a representation of that. Like the angels are coming down, Jacob's accessing it, but then like they're going back up, and so how can he rise up to access them? And there's conversation about whether or not Jacob is able to hold on to this blessing that he's given, this spiritual connection, enlightenment, right? Like he accesses the divine, and he wakes up and he says, the divine is in this place, and I did not know it. He didn't know that divine was right there. He puts his head on some rocks. That doesn't sound very comfortable. And yet he's still he accesses God in this holy place. And I love that part of this story, because it's a real powerful message to all of us that right here where all of us are is divine. sparks of life, because the divine lives everywhere, right? If we continue in the Kabbalistic tradition of the vessels, there was a vessel that the divine was contained in, and divine love became so abundant that the vessel broke into millions of pieces. And those millions of pieces are the sparks of all existence in the universe, all of us, all life form, everything. It's a different form of the Big Bang, right? Like it's the same story through a different mystical tradition. And and so it is true that right there, where Jacob puts his head down, right there is the divine. And maybe because he was scared and he was fleeing and he was lonely for a moment, he heard the divine. He saw the divine in his dream. And and the question becomes, can he hold on to that? Or does he go back into his fear and into his constricted place? And so we'll continue reading in a few moments, but we'll find out what he does. But in that moment, he can access the divine. And actually, I think already it had said, forgive me because I forgot how far we read, it had said that he then makes this bargain with God, right? Like he makes this bargain. Okay, God, if you stick with me, if you really give me abundance, then you'll be my God. So for a moment, he can hold on to the divine inspiration, but then he loses that connection pretty quickly because he's right then and there, he says that. So yeah, Ari, please.
Before you go on, can I just, I'm really
No, Ari has a question. No, Riley, hang on. Ari has his hand up.
okay, yeah.
Then you can go. Yep, I see your hand.
No, well, Riley can go. It seems to be more urgent with her. Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Riley.
I don't know if urgent's exactly the right word, but the thing I'm wondering about, and I don't have an answer for though, is what you just said seems really clear. And I'm thinking about Abraham's weak eyes, even though they mention Leah having weak eyes, which is an odd term, but he cannot see the divinity, and then he can't tell it's Leah at night, both times. So he misses. What?
Yeah. You mean Jacob?
Yeah, Jacob misses that both times. And those weak eyes for seeing divinity. And yet we see the thing that also makes me interested is Leah seems to really go along with the religion. And Rebecca, on the other hand, doesn't necessarily seem to do the same. And so I feel like the balances of the eyes and their devotion and their ability to access God is all very interesting in terms of the way they're talking about this. So the transformative power. So I'm just really curious. So yes.
Nice, beautiful, good questions. Thank you. I don't have any answers right now. We'll keep reading and see what we uncover through it. Ari, and then Debbie, and then Donna.
So you sort of took us into the more practical decision-making process that Jacob went through at the very end of what you just mentioned just now. And I'm wondering if we can also see that as somehow inspired again. So, you know, as humans, we're living in practical spaces too. And so I see it as definitely some angle. So he laid his head down. He had this amazing dream, which connects his head on the rock and the earth with God, and then he's back to the practical world when he wakes up, and that's, you know, that seems to make sense. And these are we are God's creation, and why wouldn't that make sense, kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, it's hard to hold on to the dreams.
Yeah,
it's hard to hold our dreams, particularly in this concrete world in which we live.
They're fleeting.
You know, we have connections with some spiritual consciousness. I think many of us, I'm sure, at various times in our lives have had moments of that. And then, you know, it's like, you know, meditate, and then there's the laundry, right? That great book.
Right. But it's lovely that he takes the stones that his head was on to make Bet El the house of God.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. So he's building this network of connections with the earth, the cosmology, the sky, the filament, whatever, the sky, the heavens, And, and then there's this dream of this sulam, right? The ladder, which is it's just this is one of the few places where it all seems to really work. It also does at the very beginning of Genesis, I think, at the very beginning, right? Bereshit, bara Elohim et hashamayim, and here too, it really comes together. So these moments, I think, are really precious.
Yeah, it is. This part of the story is really beautiful, right?
Yeah.
Like, and he has these rocks, and he's like, I'm going to take them with me. I was just in Joshua Tree for meditation retreat, and I took a rock or two with me to remind me, to ground me in the experience of quiet meditation, what that offered me. And so, I don't blame Jacob, right? I don't blame him for losing his connection with the divine and wanting, like, show me that I'm going to get this land. Show me you're going to give me all this. How else am I going to believe this? How can I stay connected to this? So yeah, I certainly don't blame him. Just, yeah, it's beautiful. Debbie.
Riley, I think kind of touched on this. I have always been amazed and kind of insulted that Jacob did not realize it was Leah, or Leah and not Rachel in the tent. It's like,
Right,
if you're so in love with Rachel, how could you not realize it?
right.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah. And he was there for 7 years, right? Like it wasn't like 2 days. It
right,
was a long time.
crazy.
Yeah.
And this is the first time that I didn't realize that he didn't have to wait 7 years for Rachel. I didn't realize that he got her after a week and then worked another 7 years.
Yeah.
I thought he had to work 7 years and then got her.
Yeah. No.
That's it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. And, let's think back to last week's Parsha where I mentioned that Jacob deceived his father with Rivka by having put on the sheep skin, the sheep fur on his body, and then Isaac, whose eyes were also weak, and in another different translation of weak eyes for Leah is soft eyes, but
And gentle.
Tender. So Isaac's eyes were also weak, and so supposedly he couldn't discern between his two sons, even though, as Neil pointed out, like he knew. He did know. He touched his arm and said, "Well, your arm feels like Esau, but your voice is Jacob." And you can imagine Jacob kind of having the same thing, and perhaps this is like karma, right? Like he deceived his dad to get the birthright, and now he's getting deceived by his dad's relative. Is this his uncle? His dad's uncle. Yeah, his dad's uncle, to get, to get so the uncle can marry off his first daughter first. There's also something very tragic in the story about Leah, right? Not to
It
mention.
is, and
Yeah.
it's very insulting to both of the daughters, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the maidservants and the slaves.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Let's not forget that. Donna, hello.
Hello, Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi Ken, everyone. Yeah, that's a hard part of the Pasha. I think I'm drawn to want to say something more about how inspired I am by the latter. I could tell that I came, in some ways I found it inspiring having in my own spiritual journey having been so oriented towards transcendence, that the latter offers me a kind of I'm going to say spiritual technology, because we always forget. I'm always forgetting the divine, and this offers me some. It's more than a metaphor, but certainly a way of recognizing that is part of the process of bringing the divine into my daily life and into the world. It's always up and down for me, and I'm just really inspired during these times in particular to be reading this parsha now, because I want to be reminded and be lifted by the latter as a reminder
bringing it back down and always being able to find my way into the divine and being inspired. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. I just want to read something to you all. So the Kabbalistic texts teach us that Jacob, so the Kabbalistic texts have the biblical characters are not only figures in and of themselves, but they're like avatars for facets of God's refracted revelation within the cosmos. So Jacob is associated with divine compassion, and Rachel is associated with the Shekhinah, the immanent presence of the divine here, not the transcendent divine, that the God that descends into this material world in which we live. So the verse about Jacob kissing Rachel is an account of God's compassionate love for the facet of the deity's own being that descends into earthly reality. So this kiss becomes this compassionate love of God that allows Jacob to have a connection with divine source separate from his alienated self. So that it's like so Jacob's kiss represents a divine reunion. Don't think of Jacob as a person here, right? Think of it as an avatar, right? As a spiritual entity. Divine reunion in which God's love for the Shekhinah manifests in the place of alienation. And I just thought that was so beautiful. And then in the Psalm, there's this beautiful, in Psalm 85, verse 11, it says, loving kindness and truth will meet, and justice and peace will kiss. And so this, yeah, right. When I read this, it just made me go to that psalm. There was something about like, here's this kiss of compassion and Shekhinah energy, and that's uniting. And then when somehow it just for me connected to the psalm of the meeting, when loving kindness, chesed, and truth, emet, meet, then tzedek and shalom, justice and peace will kiss. And so if we think of these beings as avatars for divine sparks, then to me that brings us on that journey a little bit. So Rachel, welcome.
Hi, this is my first time, so I'm glad to be here.
Thank you.
I always think of this, I guess I'm earthbound. I always think of this in terms of the family and family relationships and communication in the family. And you look at it with both siblings, Laban and Rebecca, neither of whom is very able to communicate directly with her family or his family. And so with both of them, they use deception to get what they want. And I'm never quite sure whether that's what God wants or not.
Right. Beautiful. It's a powerful question, right? I think it's something that happens in the Torah a lot. Like God tells Abraham, right? Like, don't worry, your children are going to spread out like grains of sand all over the earth, both for Ishmael and for Isaac, and he doesn't really trust it. He doesn't really trust it. And again, here, right? Jacob is told, you're going to get all this land, but he can't trust it. And Rachel's told the older's going to serve the younger, but she doesn't trust that will happen, even if she does nothing to make it happen. I mean, Rivka, excuse me, Jacob's mother. So she has to put herself into the divine unfolding. She doesn't trust that it's going to happen. At the same time, we're told that we're partners with God in making things happen in this world. So how do we hold that, right? Like, is there I mean, I don't think that God wants us to be deceptive. So what would happen? Imagine what would have happened if these stories happened without these deceptions, right? If there was truth telling in these stories, because there's a lot of deception happening in our world today. And it's leading to a lot of horror and a lot of pain and a lot of suffering, as it does in these stories. And so maybe, Rachel, I'm appreciating you raising this, because maybe this is also telling us that in order for us to get to the place where we have justice and peace, deception and lies are not going to get us there. But truth and love and compassion need to meet to get us to justice and peace. Thank you for that, Rachel. Beautiful. Neil.
There's so many rich themes here that I feel a little bit challenged in terms of which one to choose, but I'll go following up on the important question Debbie raised a little while ago of how come Jacob was unable to tell which of the daughters it was. And there's a midrash that said Jacob suspected that there was sneakiness going on, and him and Rachel had a secret hand signal to be able to tell this is the real deal. But Rachel's family, who was so full of treachery, they assumed such a thing would happen, and that they used the social pressure of the family and the disingenuous, well, the proper thing is for the older daughter to get married first, that Rachel succumbed to this and gave Leah the secret hand code so that Jacob, similar to parallel, this is the kinesthetic of Esau, but it's the voice of Jacob. He got the kinesthetic code and assumed that therefore it was Rachel, much to his chagrin in the morning.
Right, right. I mean, it does kind of feel like karmic path unfolding, right? He deceived and then he got deceived. Yeah. And also it's, we've talked a lot about the fact, and Mark and Ari, I see your hands, give me one sec. We talked a lot about the fact that our ancestors are really messed up people. They're really screwed up. And because, of course, all of us are. And in some ways, that's one of the beautiful things about our Torah. It doesn't try to put them on these pedestals. They're very, very unhealthy, not well people. And I think it allows us the opportunity to be reflective and think about, well, is that how we really want to be? Is that who we really want to be? Is that the world we want to really inhabit? How might we do this differently? So it gives us opportunities to ask ourselves those questions. Mark, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Kath. And hi, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. I wonder when Jacob, after he built that altar, kind of like creating art in that moment of wonder and awe, he went right to being transactional. Say, if you do this and this and this, then you'll be my God. And it leads me to the question about how we see that there's beauty or there's something, there's immanence right here. What brings us to being able to let go enough to just be in that and to trust that? I think you've been talking about that and going to that. I love that Kabbalistic image of Jacob representing, I forgot what it was, but the Shekhinah, kissing the Shekhinah in a way, the character, the symbol of Jacob being
Compassion.
compassion, yeah. And it's just, how do we get out of this transactional moment that we're in on a global scale, and which might be just capitalism, into a moment of encounter with each other.
Exquisite question, Mark. Really, right? I mean, we are living in such a transactional world. We've been living in a transactional world forever, really. And how do we? That's part of the beautiful thing about the Hasidic and Kabbalistic teachings, is it really does help us tap into the mystical, the divine, and then take it with us for the week. I mean, that's Shabbat, right? Shabbat is supposed to be this opportunity to tap into something magical, something non-transactional, right? There's enough. So in the desert, right? Don't gather food on Shabbat. There'll be enough provided on Friday, and then on Sunday there'll be enough again. And don't cook and don't shop and don't engage in the material reality of the universe for one day, for 25 hours. Allow yourself to be lying on that rock and imagining a ladder and drawing down. On Shabbat, the divine energy comes down, and then during the week, we're supposed to like climb back up that ladder and pull it down so we can access it during the week. How often do we really do that? It's hard, because we're in the material world. We're in the, we have to get ahead, and we have to get and consume and own and control. And so how do we move beyond it when it's so prevalent in the world? And I think that, for me, that's part of why I like being involved in spiritual activism as opposed to more secular activism, because it allows us to ask these questions and try to integrate kind of the belief in something that's us and beyond us, of which we all are, and it's so much more than we all are, and that there's something in the cosmology of the universe. The cosmic consciousness is one of my favorite words about that. There's something in this cosmic consciousness that's beyond us, that from that place we engage in trying to transform the world. So thank you, Mark.
Yeah. Is there anyone else?
Ari.
Okay, then I can go after.
Okay, Ari.
Yeah, and part of that transformation is what I always bring him up, Martin Buber, this idea of encounter. So certainly on that Sulam, there is this experience of encounter. This relationality of encounter as opposed to experience, where, Jacob lands later when he's telling God, well, I'll believe in you if X, Y, and Z are fulfilled. I also wanted to make the point that, and so to go back to your point, this Shabbat being this transformative space where we can leave behind and move into a more mystical space. I think obviously there's many ways to think about how we have to carry that Shabbat with us throughout the week. And I think, that's what people try to do, even if they're not taking the mystical positioning on this. But I do think that as far as the question of deception, so I think we probably have to make more of the love between Jacob and Rachel. And people from time in memoriam have found ways to work around normativity. And this was the way that I think that they were able to work, especially building on the drash that Neil pointed out. So again, the normativity of the eldest daughter having to be married first, right? And it's not even clear to me that her father was deceiving Jacob. He may have thought that in 7 years she will get married first. I don't know, right? Do we really know that? Maybe not. But anyway, it's just that, okay, if she had, this would have worked out. Of course, he could have been more transparent by mentioning that earlier on, but
at the time of the wedding,
yeah,
that's 7 years later.
Yeah.
So at that point, he knows she's not getting married first.
Yeah, that's true.
There is that deception. I mean, in his mind, he might have thought, yeah, you can marry Rachel, assuming, like you're saying, over the next 7 years, Leah will get married. But she didn't. And then at that moment, he now knows what he's going to do. Maybe he didn't know it 7 years earlier. I think that,
So the main point, I think, is that the that humans find ways to work around normativity when it's too hard for them otherwise. And that's a different interpretation of deception here, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, although Jacob's feeling deceived, right? Jacob was clearly deceived. Maybe Rachel. I mean, I think Rachel and Leah were probably in on it, midrash or no midrash. Like,
Yeah.
but you jumped on my screen, and there you are. And but it was definitely a deception. I mean, even if Rachel and Leah and Laban were getting around the normativity of marrying off the first, it was still a deception to Jacob.
Yeah.
He didn't know that they were maneuvering around that. Of course, that's what he did to get the blessing. So, Ami.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm just looking at the paragraph at the beginning when we talked about this place. After Jacob wakes up, he says this place, and the word place is mentioned like 3 times in very short order. Makom, yeah, place. And I think this represents a bit of a consciousness evolution that we see throughout the Torah, which is at least for me, a chronicling of the evolution of consciousness from the very primordial to us being fully human. And here, that Jacob stresses that this place, this ground has the divine in it. And I and people before me didn't realize that in fact God is everywhere. God is on the ground we walk. And this will repeat itself later with Moses take off his shoes and all that. But this is the first time we see this. And I think it's magnificent. And Makom is so important here that it becomes another name for God. Hamakom Hazeh. And it says he was awestruck. And that's really, when is that, it's part of this march along the consciousness evolution of our people. And this is important, that realizing that God is here. God is not up there only. God is here, right here on the ground that I walk. And that becomes important for us today, that God is everywhere. And every grain of sand in the Woody Guthrie song, every grain of sand is holy ground. Everywhere is holy. We just have to have the ability to be awestruck, and we have to have the ability to recognize that. And I think that'll go a long way for us all if we do. And one other thing that I'm teaching a course now on what's called the Nigun, the wordless melody. It's a 4-week course. And we talk about this sulam, and the Kabbalists do also, in terms of melody. That the sulam, which by the way is the same Hebrew word that's used today for musical scale. A musical scale in music is called a sulam.
Sulam is the word in the Torah for ladder, that's used in this parsha.
Right, the sulam is the ladder that the angels are going, importantly, up from, not first down from, but up from, goes along with this idea of holy ground. Divinity begins here, and it goes upwards, and then it comes back downwards. And this is the same thing as the melody. The holy nigun, which was very important for Kabbalists and then, of course, for Hasidim, and the importance of melody is just like the sulam, like the ladder, and the angels are the notes. And the rungs of the ladder are the staff of the musical scale. And it's a beautiful image that the power of the nigun has that to go beyond the words and just assume angelic notes as an expression, a deep expression of the heart. So anyway, this is an important parsha for our course, because it's a Kabbalistic, and the Kabbalists say there's only 4 rungs on his ladder. The ladder going to heaven, obviously the 4 worlds of the Kabbalist view of their cosmology involves 4 worlds, and groundedness on the bottom, and then, of course, loss of the self and ego and pure essence at the top. So it's filled with Kabbalistic, but especially with melody, which for the Hasidim and the Kabbalists was the highest form of approaching divinity, is through song, pure song.
So I just want to explain a nigun, for those of you who don't know, is a wordless melody. After we finish chanting some of our prayers in the words, and then we just continue to do la la la, that's in a tune, that's essentially a nigun. And the four worlds are Asiya, which is the being world, Yetzirah, is that the feeling or the brain? That's the feeling, the world of feeling. Bria, which is the world of thinking, and Atzilut, which is the spiritual world. So those are the four worlds. So that's why the Kabbalists say there's four rungs on the ladder, because a lot of Kabbalist teachings are in this realm of these four worlds. So, yeah. Rachel, I just wanted to do that. No.
As a musician, I love that. So thank you for that. We talk about relationships and we talk about parent-child and husband-wife or sexual love, but we don't seem to talk very much about the sibling relationship. And that troubles me in all of the patriarchal families, that the sibling relationship somehow gets corrupted by what the parents are doing.
And ain't that true sometimes? Right. I mean, sadly, right? I think it's a manifestation of what some of us experience, this sense of, I think it was Ari saying it, but we've talked about a lot, Neil also, like there's not enough, but there is, parental love is vast, is expansive. After you have, I can speak personally, like after you have your first, you think I can never love like this again. And lo and behold, you can, because you have your second or your third or your fourth or whatever, but there is that jealousy, and we see that in the very first story of siblings with Cain and Abel, with God. Abel brings God food as a gift offering, and God is like enamored and so grateful, and Cain brings something and God's like, oh, what's the big deal? And Cain gets so jealous that he kills Abel. So this again, I think, if we read this Torah as teachings, as warnings or insights into what doesn't work and what could work, then right here we're reading, breaking up of families and deceit and prioritizing one sibling over the other and not sharing the resources and the blessings of families creates incredible trauma that lives for generations and generations that we're still seeing. That's one thing that we can take from these teachings, I think. We often, right, we often talk about the Torah as a critique of empire, but it's a critique of so many things that we can then chew on and learn and figure out how to do it differently in our lives and in our world. Mark, again, please.
Well, just quickly, I was thinking that maybe Esau really did have a love for the place that they were born into. And Jacob did not, it was that integral struggle, because Esau was going to get the blessings. So it's easy for him to have love for the place, but this is the story, for Esau to have a love of that place, but this is the story of Jacob, who didn't have the blessings, so he was brought into struggle and not an easy, kind of transaction with people or just simple love of the place, and that's for us to learn.
Beautiful, thank you. Riley.
I like that. I was actually, just as a side note before I say something else, one of my favorite lines I heard someone say is, "There is no war like civil war." And so I appreciated that instead of civil. I am very struck that, back to part of what you had said at the beginning of this, but even more so, that Jacob, in a way, has a transcendent experience sitting on the stone, and maybe the stone is a statement about the hardships already endured and how that leads to that growth. And then he is unable to hold it everywhere because he makes that place sacred, but he doesn't make other places sacred in the same way. And that is a very interesting issue. I mean, the two other things I wonder about are, one is, so why then does God bestow blessings on Jacob given what has happened and Jacob's actions? And maybe even what does that say for us right now? And also, there's a place where I wonder for Laban, who starts to take, I think, Jacob for granted and no longer honors him and only sees what he has received because he's made his life easy. I wonder if Laban, therefore, is no longer seeing himself as the offerer in some ways, but as entitled. And so all three of those strains are kind of coming up for me in this.
Yeah, thank you. There was something I was going to say, but it's how again, that's the question we've been asking, right? How do we take an experience of connection with divine sacredness, with cosmic consciousness, with the awe and wonder of the universe, and take it with us as we journey? You know, how do you leave a retreat and take the richness that you get in that experience with you as you continue? And that, to me, is the power of in a regular type of practice, whatever that practice is for any of us, right? I pray every morning, and it does ground me every day in the connection with the awe and wonder of the universe. Just saying the prayers and daily doing it every single day. And like, it may just be a moment of spark that I can say, oh, right, there's something awesome in this universe, something to be grateful for. So yeah, that's right. That's the power of practice for me, I will say. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe also it's really interesting. I just realized the other thing, which is that the path to divinity are notes rather than words. And that there is too much to be said to have any word hold it, I guess is what I would say. And that the singing into creation maybe is sound based and not word based. You know? So.
That's exactly
Andre. Oh,
I'm sorry. That's exactly what's said. Is the nigun, the wordless melody, is precisely because words get in the way, and words are the vehicle for dividing and defining and limiting. But in the Kabbalistic attempt to have the ultimate, in Hasidic attempt to have the ultimate connection with the divine, which is quite intimate, there can't be anything that limits or defines, i.e. words. It has to be beyond words.
yeah.
And again, really quickly, in our prayers that we did before, over and over again, the form of praise that the divine requests, the best way we can praise the divine is in song. It says it over and over again. Our actions and our song.
Yeah, I was going to say the mitzvah.
Yeah,
the mitzvot are rather important too.
The action
yeah, we have to engage
and the
in the
song
actions.
intimately connected, and that's what the words do. We sing that action and we act out that. Anyway, enough. Come join the class.
Thank you, Andre.
Well, very interesting discussion. And one aside, before I make a point I was trying to remember, was that one of the wisdom from Greek philosophy is dancing. And I was thinking of that as Rabbi Kat, you get up and dance, and then it motivates me to get up and dance. And then something happens that's really wonderful. But I've been thinking in this discussion of the issue of blessings and who gets them, who doesn't get them, how they're metered out, how they're deceived for it, what the transaction is for it. There's a whole, for me, at least in this discussion or learning about the Torah, that there's a whole different idea about blessings that comes through, as opposed to what comes through in our prayers during Shabbat, where blessings are shared, and then there's enough for everybody. And then, to use Rabbi Katz's interesting expression on a spiritual version of the Big Bang Theory, which I found very interesting, there was an explosion of blessings, perhaps. So it seems to me there's a contrast. I keep fighting the interpretations or the messages from this particular reading and maybe others, because I'm in a space earlier in the service where blessings, there's a different idea about blessings. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. I'm trying to find the part in the last week's Parsha after Isaac gives Jacob the blessing, and then Esau finds out. Esau's like, it's such a gut-wrenching, hard, painful, sad thing. Esau's like, but isn't there a blessing for me? Bless me too, Father. And you can just hear his brokenness and his grief. He's like, please, there must be a blessing for me too. And yeah, and yet you're right, Andre, in the prayers, I talk about, and we do all these blessings, and I say, come on, we're told to, say something like 100 blessings a day, or, like, so maybe one of the blessings we can take as a lesson from this is that we don't have to look outside of ourselves to receive blessings. We can all access blessings in the forms of expressions of gratitude, in the forms of connections with the divine, in the forms of the gifts that we see in the universe. Like, we all have access to practice and receive and take in the abundance of blessings in our lives. And so I'm going to give you a challenge for the week. Okay, maybe for the next 24 hours. See if you can, every hour, just think of something that you're grateful for and say a blessing for it. And that blessing can manifest however you want to say it. And I'm going to say a blessing for my doggie. I'm very blessed to have this wonderful doggie who's telling me how blessed I am, and he's expressing his blessing for having me. But that, just imagine, if you could, for the next 24 hours, to just every hour, you could set your alarm and just take in a blessing, and just notice how that impacts that day, your day, the rest of your day.
And the perk of offering a blessing, the perk of it all is that you in the process are blessed, as we sang before.
Yeah. Right. As we bless the source of life, so we are blessed. And our blessings give us strength. And our blessings makes our vision clear.
Gives us peace.
Our blessings give us peace and the courage to dare. Which for me, that particular prayer for me is what allows me to have courage sometimes to stand up and do the things and say the things that I do in this moment, to challenge the genocide and the injustices, or to speak the truth as I see it. Because I can have a blessing and say, oh, I'm blessed, therefore I have the courage, or I almost must have the courage. So, yeah, Ari. No, sorry.
And it's physiologically good for you, too.
Right.
Take it from me.
Take it from the doctor.
Okay. So a few people have talked about how the stones and the creation of Bet El and this kind of space or place, makom, that is suddenly generated here. And I think in mysticism, you might see it as bringing forward all time past, and future. So even though it was just one place that Jacob created, it is all places and it is all times. And to go to Big Bang now a little bit, this is the concept that Einstein developed, not with Big Bang, but with what he called chronotope, which is now being used in culture studies and sociolinguistics. A chronotope is this concept of this kind of mashup of time and space, like mystics see, to try to understand how people communicate. And then to connect that to what was said about how people were so the concept of deception. So if you look at the concept of deception again, and you look at the language that the Torah is written in, it's very direct. It's very rare for humans to interact in an indirect conversation or speech act. The speech acts are very, very direct, particularly when God is around. This is a section where God is around. Everything seems to be very, pretty direct. That having said, there's a lot of symbolism and interesting imagery, but it is very direct. And that directness is, I think, an aspect of this genre of writing, or developing, however it was developed, the Torah. And that is probably why, again, so the concept of how people are communicating, what's happening, there has to be further drash to figure out what's really happening behind the scenes, and interpretation, So that's it.
Yeah, thank you. Rachel.
Thinking about the blessing, because I wrote a poem some years ago, Abraham as an old man looking back at his life. And in it, when he talks about the blessing, it's it's that it's time for him to pass on the burden of the blessing. And when we talk about this, I think of that particular blessing as a burden, and we're still carrying that particular burden, which ties into the idea of place, of being a chosen people and having a holy place.
Oh, that blessing.
That blessing.
Thank you. I was going to ask you, I wasn't clear which blessing you were referring to. The blessing of us being, quote unquote, the chosen people. Yeah. But actually, in the Torah, we're not the only chosen people. Right? Isaiah's, Ishmael, is going to spread throughout the world and be a blessing and be numerous as well. So I think it gets translated and interpreted in ways that aren't necessarily reflective of what the Torah really says for our people. Wow, we just got through one chapter. So let's see. I think we can.
It's
quarter to 12. But actually, you know what I want to do? There's so much more in this parsha, but if we keep going, we're gonna go for another hour. So we might read a little bit more. But what I want to do first is I want to invite us into a meditation. So I'm going to invite you to close your eyes if that's comfortable for you, or look down, however you want to enter into an inner space with yourself. Get yourself comfortable. Feel your feet on the ground. Just take some breaths to settle down for a moment and let everything that's been said and all of the feelings that have arisen for you, all the thoughts and feelings in your body and in your heart and in your mind, just let them wash over you. And see if you can let them, imagine them as letters and as words just falling away for right now, falling off of you for right now, so that you can be a little bit of as clean a vessel as possible for this moment. And now feel yourself in your place. Makom Hazeh, in this place where you are right now. If your feet are touching the ground or the floor, feel that connection. Or the connection with the chair or the couch, or maybe your bed. Makom Hazeh. And to the extent that you're able, allow yourself to imagine that divine consciousness, divine essence is in this place, Hamakom Hazeh. It's here, where you are. The divine energy and sparks arise from below and descend from above. Imagine yourself as the ladder between and part of the divine energy. As the divine energy flows up, it flows up through you because you are part of divine energy. And as it flows down, it flows through you, through the spiritual world, through the world of thinking and feeling, to the embodied reality of this world and of you. See if you can feel that energy flowing up and down, down and up. Let that divine energy fill you up as it fills a vessel, rising from below, being poured down from above, the Shefa flow. See if it can fill you so much that it's overflowing out from your pores and your cells, out. Feel the overflowing, connecting with the divine energy and sparks that are beyond you. Imagine them dancing in delight, recognizing the reconnection. seeing each other again, these divine sparks, embracing. How far can it expand? Imagine every person having a moment like this right now. Every person in the universe, just imagine for a moment, every single person experiencing this divine flow from above and below and beyond, expanding and touching each other, all life form, through your city and your state, through your country, around the entire globe, because it is everywhere in this universe. Imagine divine sparks of light everywhere in this universe, because it is in fact everywhere in the universe. See somebody that you struggle with, and just allow yourself to see some essence of the divine, some sparks within them as well. In this month of Kislev, this month of Hanukkah, we light the candles. So let's imagine us being conduits for lighting the divine energy, the divine sparks of light within us. And as we take it in and experience its abundance beyond us, we spread it far and wide. And let us imagine that this could potentially allow for the possibility of other people to recognize the divine in all life, even those we perceive to be enemies, even those we other. Let's just imagine, even for the next 25 hours, that everyone in the universe is experiencing everyone else in every place that they are as sparks of the divine. That the divine is everywhere. And let us just imagine, just have faith that for a moment, because of this collective recognition, that there's a collective breath, a collective pause, where the divine breathes out more fully and spreads her energy more widely. So that this place and all places can be not only places of divine location and existence, but actual recognition that the divine is everywhere, in everyone, in everything. so that we can create a world that is worthy of the divine's presence, where loving kindness and truth meet, and justice and peace finally kiss. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, you can start it right now. I'm just going to do a little chant, Hamakom Hazeh, for a moment. How awesome is this place?
Manora Hamakom Hazeh. Manora Hamakom Hazeh. Manora Hamakom Hazeh.
Send some of this, picture places in the world, and send this energy to that place that needs some of this energy. Yesterday was a year since the murder of Rifa'at al-Arir, a Palestinian poet and teacher. And I just want to read one of his poems that went viral after he was intentionally killed in his home. It's called If I Must Die. If I must die, you must live. To tell my story. To sell my things. To buy a piece of cloth and some strings. Make it white with a long tail. So that a child somewhere in Gaza, while looking heaven in the eye, awaiting his dad who left in a blaze, and bid no one farewell, not even to his flesh, not even to himself, sees the kite, my kite you made, flying up above, and thinks for a moment an angel is there, bringing back love. If I must die, let it bring hope. let it be a tale. We'll do the blessings after the Torah. Thank you all for such a beautiful Torah conversation and study today.
Baruch atah Eloheinu ruach haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata betochenu. Baruch atah ad shechina notenet haTorah. Amen.